Your bed is younger than your bones, by a lot. For roughly 290,000 of the 300,000 years your species has existed, no one slept on anything close to what you will lie down on tonight. No mattress, no box spring, no headboard, no bedroom even. Not a single ancestor of yours, going back thousands of generations, would recognize the flat foam rectangle you call a bed. And here is the part that stops the room. Most of them slept better than you do. You have probably been told that the modern bed is the height of comfort, and that everything before it was just suffering quietly on rocks. Hold that thought, because in 2011, inside a rock shelter called Sibudu in eastern South Africa, an archaeologist named Lyn Wadley found something that quietly broke that story. Beds, or what bedding looked like 77,000 years ago. Layered mats of sedge and rushes, soft, woven, deliberate, pressed under the bodies of ancient humans who already understood the basic geometry of a good night's sleep. You need cushioning. You need insulation from the cold ground. You need to be off the dirt that bugs crawl through. On top of the rushes, they laid crushed leaves of Cryptocarya, woodii. The leaves of that specific tree contain natural insect-repelling compounds. They knew. By instinct, by trial, by elder, they knew. Now picture that for a second. You are 30,000 years before agriculture, before pottery, before wheels, and you have already invented the natural mattress. So if early humans were sleeping on woven herbal bedding 77,000 years ago, what came before that? And what comes after? The part that almost everyone today gets backwards. Go further back. In 2020, working at Border Cave on the edge of South Africa and Eswatini, the same researcher and her team found bedding that pushed the timeline to 200,000 years ago. So as long as anatomically modern humans have existed, they have been arranging soft plant material in a corner of a sheltered space, near a small protective fire, and lying down on it to sleep. Picture it. You are in the dim mouth of a cave. The fire is low. Smoke keeps the mosquitoes off. The grasses under you were pulled fresh that morning and crushed slightly so they hold body heat. There are people on either side of you, breathing slow. You are not alone. You have never been alone for a single night of your life. The idea of sleeping in a separate room from your tribe would seem dangerous and bizarre. This is the part the modern story leaves out. A bed, for almost all of human history, was a place, a nest of soft things, a space inside a group, not a piece of furniture. So when did beds become objects? That shift did not happen until very recently, and here is where it gets strange. The world's oldest surviving physical bed, an actual raised, designed object, sits in the village of Skara Brae in Orkney, Scotland. It is about 5,000 years old, built of stone slabs set into the wall, filled with heather and animal skins. It still looks like a bed today. Around the same time, in ancient Egypt, beds rose off the ground entirely onto wooden frames with woven cord supports and a slight slope toward the foot, so blood would not pool in your face. Pharaohs slept on those. Most peasants did not. For thousands of years, all over the planet, this was the pattern. The wealthy slept on raised frames, stuffed with feathers or straw. Most everyone else slept on a thick mat on the floor, together, in one room. You think you sleep like a king. You sleep like a medieval merchant at best. But raised beds are not even the strangest part of pre-industrial sleep. The strangest part is when it happened. In the 1990s, a historian at Virginia Tech named Roger Ekirch was reading through Old English court depositions and household letters from the 1500s and 1600s. He kept noticing two phrases that did not quite make sense to him. People referred to their first sleep and their second sleep as if these were separate named things, like breakfast and dinner. He started collecting these references. He found more than 500 of them across more than 2,000 years of writing. In English, in French, in Italian, in medical texts and prayer books and novels and trial transcripts. The pattern was always the same. Your ancestors went to bed not long after sunset. They slept hard for about 4 hours. Then, around midnight, they woke up, naturally, with no alarm. And they stayed awake for an hour or two. This was called the watch. During the watch, people did calm, low-light things. They prayed. They tended the fire. They made love. They visited the neighbors. They wrote. There are 17th century prayer manuals with prayers written specifically for the middle of the night, for use between the two sleeps. There are doctors of the period prescribing the watch as the best time to conceive a child, because both parents were rested and relaxed. There are letters where a wife mentions, in passing, that she got up during her watch to finish some sewing. Then, after the watch, you went back to bed. Your second sleep was lighter, full of dreams, and lasted until dawn. This was not insomnia. This was sleep, as your species was built for it. In the early 1990s, a sleep researcher at the US National Institute of Mental Health named Thomas Wehr decided to test something. He put healthy volunteers in a controlled environment with 14 hours of darkness every night, the way your ancestors would have experienced in winter. For the first few weeks, the volunteers slept like modern people, one long block. Then slowly, their sleep broke in two. They slept 4 hours, woke calmly, lay awake for 1 or 2 quiet hours, then slept 4 more. They reported feeling more rested than they had in years. They described the middle night waking as peaceful, almost meditative. Their bodies were doing exactly what Ekirch's documents had described for 2,000 years. Modern monophasic sleep, 8 hours straight through, is not the ancient default. It is an industrial accident. The single largest cause was artificial light. Once cheap candles, then gas lamps, then electric bulbs pushed bedtime later and later, the watch got squeezed out. People started going to bed at 11 instead of 9. The first sleep and the watch collapsed into a single, frustrated fight for unconsciousness. By the late 1800s, the phrase "first sleep" had quietly disappeared from English. You may know the watch. You may have met it without knowing what it was. If you have ever woken up at 3 in the morning, restless and slightly panicked, and stared at the ceiling for an hour, that was not your sleep failing. That was an older instruction running in the background. Your body remembered something you had forgotten. So what does sleep actually look like today in cultures that never industrialized? In 2015, a sleep researcher named Jerome Siegel at UCLA led a study that followed something almost no one had measured before. His team lived with 3 groups of people who still sleep without electricity, screens, or modern bedding. The HD Zoo, hunter-gatherers in the savannas of Tanzania. The San, sometimes called the Zutwansi, in the Kalahari. And the Tsimane, forager farmers in the Bolivian Amazon. 3 continents, 3 languages, 3 completely unconnected cultures. What did Siegel's team find? All 3 slept about 6.5 hours a night, less than the modern recommendation. None of them had a word for insomnia in their language. They went to sleep about 3 hours after sunset, woke before sunrise, and felt fine. Their sleep was timed to the coldest part of the night. Body temperature matters more than darkness for triggering deep sleep, and in a hut with no walls and a low fire, the cold settled around 4 a.m. That is when their bodies hit their hardest sleep. They did not use beds in the modern sense. A mat, a blanket, a spot near the family. The anthropologist Carol Worthman at Emory University has spent decades documenting exactly this. Her conclusion is blunt. Solo sleep on a mattress in a sealed dark room is one of the rarest sleep arrangements human beings have ever invented. For almost all of human history, sleep was social, layered, watched over. So here is the part you can feel. When you lie down tonight, in your private room, on your firm rectangle of foam, with your phone face down and the thermostat locked at 68 degrees, you are not sleeping the way your species evolved to sleep. You are sleeping inside a very strange experiment. The experiment is about 200 years old. It is an outlier in your DNA's calendar. The bed is the most recent thing in the bedroom. Older than the bed is the watch in the middle of the night that you have been taught to be afraid of. Older than the watch is the soft mat of grass laid down in a cave 200,000 years ago, with people around you, with a small fire keeping the cold off. Older than even that is the simple instruction your body still carries. Sleep is not a switch. Sleep is a season inside the night. It has a middle. It has neighbors. It has fire. You cannot go back to that cave. But on the night you wake at 3 in the morning, restless and certain that something is wrong, you might consider that nothing is wrong. You are not broken. An instruction, 200,000 years old, is asking you, quietly, what it has always asked. What will you do with your watch? Your bed is younger than your bones. The sleep inside it is older than you can imagine. If the world you came from feels a little closer now, that's exactly the point. Subscribe, and every week we'll uncover another piece of who you used to be.